Hello. So in this video, we're going to talk about titling your academic book and some of the competing forces that go into making those decisions. There are a lot of different elements that go into coming up with a book title. And this is an interesting distinction because to a certain extent, these are similar pressures that go into titling things like a dissertation or a master's thesis or even a scholarly article. But for books, there are additional specific considerations. Now, the stuff that I'm going to be saying is generally applicable for monographs and for edited collections. So the distinction there basically is a monograph is something written by a single author. An edited collection is something where chapters from a bunch of different authors are collected up by an editor into one unified book. So I'm primarily familiar with the humanities, English, theater studies, classics, these kinds of disciplines, but probably there are similar forces at work in all academic publishing. So, all that stuff being said as the sort of baseline, there are different schools of thought in terms of titling a book. One thing that you sort of have to balance between is a title that's going to generate interest versus a title that's going to inform. So, and this is actually where we get into one of the first challenges of book publishing that doesn't necessarily apply to things like articles, dissertations, etc., etc. Because one of the big forces right now determining how scholarly books get titled is publishers' marketing departments, right? Because publishers have to sell books. And part of the way that they sell books is through marketing. Scholarly publishers like Routledge, like Palgrave, university presses, things like this, all have marketing departments. People whose job it is to figure out how to move as many units as possible. And the marketing department plays actually a big role in determining what titles get published because they have their own sets of ideas about what is going to appeal to readers. And they tend to lean toward more just informative titles. So I've got a couple of recently published books here. Arlene W. Saxonhouse's book, this is from University of Cambridge Press, titled Free Speech and Democracy in Ancient Athens. Another one here, Babacar Mbaye's Routledge published book, Black Cosmopolitanism and Anti-Colonialism, Pivotal Moments. So one thing you see with both of these books, I'm going to try and get both of these in front. One thing you see with both of these book titles is that they are very straightforward. They tell you exactly what this book is about. Free speech and democracy in ancient Athens. This is going to be about the connection between free speech and democracy in ancient Athens. You know exactly what's in there. Black cosmopolitanism and anti-colonialism. We know that Mbaye is going to be writing about the intersections of Black cosmopolitanism and anti-colonialism. So this is a thing that marketing departments really love today. They love this. And actually, if you look through a lot of contemporary book catalogs by academic publishers, you will see this pretty consistently, where you have a title that is not necessarily it doesn't have that gotcha factor necessarily. It's not sort of zippy. I don't know. I don't know a good way to say this. It doesn't have a hook necessarily, but what it does is very specific. It tells you exactly what that book is about. And marketing departments love this because what they figure is there's so many books on the market and there's so much competition between books that putting a title that tells you exactly what the book does on it is going to be the best way to ensure that people pick up that book, because they don't get a title like Totem and Taboo, for instance, or Moses and Monotheism. These are both titles of Freud books from back in the day. Even something like Gender Trouble by Judith Butler. If that's the thing that's on the cover, people may say, I don't know what that's about. Whereas if it says Black Cosmopolitanism and Anti-Colonialism, marketing departments figure people are going to know exactly what that's about. The people who want to read that are going to pick it up. Perfect. So that's a big part of the reason you see so many books coming out with titles like these that are just very direct and very clear. And I think there is some benefit to that. Like you get a sense that the marketing people are not wrong necessarily. If you're skimming through a publisher's catalog or something like this, it is much easier to say, okay, Black cosmopolitanism and anti-colonialism, that aligns with my interests, than if it had a more vague title or something like this. Something that might be more intriguing or enigmatic, but not as informative. Another approach that some people take is just have a very basic title, like this one, Classics and Colonialism, edited by Barbara Goff. This does tell you generally what the book is about, but it doesn't... There's a lot of books on classics and colonialism. This was... Recently, attention seems to have sort of... It seems like attention has shifted away from classics and colonialism, the role of classic literature in maintaining colonial systems and in anti-colonial movements. It does seem like attention has somewhat shifted. Anyway, that's irrelevant to the point I'm making. A title like Classics and Colonialism is very simple, very pithy, very straightforward, in a way that something like Free Speech and Democracy in Ancient Athens isn't necessarily as pithy. Classics and Colonialism rolls off the tongue. And there is some value to that. Because one of the benefits of it is marketing works with creating memorable moments. And so some memorable moments, memorable ideas, memorable sounds even. And so Classics and Colonialism, because it works that way, it has that sort of gotcha factor. This is a title strategy that some people go for. Just very simple, very straightforward. And again, this is kind of an old school way of doing things as well. Again, if we go back to somebody like Freud, the uncanny, Moses and monotheism. If you can get particularly if you can get a sort of alliteration or something, where you have a repetition of sounds, this is a good strategy to go for. But I think probably still, and this I think started a ways back, but probably still the most common approach to titling an academic book is to have a catchy main title and then a more informative subtitle. So this gives you a good balance between that sort of nice, engaging, enigmatic title that's going to pique readers' interest, but then that marketing department thing that they love where you're giving us information about the book. And so I've got a couple of examples of two fairly recent books and one slightly older book that does this. The older book, Ngugi wa Thiong'o's Decolonizing the Mind, The Politics of Language in African Literature. So, Decolonizing the Mind is the main title here. it's a great title, but it doesn't necessarily tell you that much about what the subject matter is. But then the politics of language in African literature, the subtitle, gives us that more informative section. And again, we see this very, very commonly today. Barbara Goff and Michael Simpson recently released this edited collection, Classicizing Crisis. So there's your title, Classicizing Crisis. Again, you've got that alliteration. You've got that repetition of C sounds and S sounds. It works really well. It kind of rolls off the tongue in that way. But then we've got the modern age of revolutions and the Greco-Roman repertoire. So the subtitle, again, is doing what the marketing department wants and telling readers exactly what this book is about. The other one that I'm going to give you is another Routledge book. My book actually uses this technique, Hellenic Common. So here I haven't gone, there's a tiny bit of alliteration. There's the C's at the end of Hellenic and the beginning of Common, but really not alliteration. But it's something that readers might say, hey, I don't know what that means. I want to know more. So if you can create that sort of mystery, that intrigue, that's really what a title ideally should do in this scheme. But then I've got what the marketing department wanted, Greek drama and cultural cosmopolitanism in the neoliberal era. And because this is my book and I know how this title came to be, the marketing department originally just wanted what became the subtitle to be the title of the book. So this could very well have been, in big letters, Greek drama and cultural cosmopolitanism in the neoliberal era. That could have been the title of my book. But I didn't want that. I wanted that sort of mystery, that sort of intrigue factor of having a main title and then the subtitle to sort of support that. So the marketing department at Routledge and the publishing reps that I worked with were very open to that. They didn't have any real problem with that. They weren't thrilled with the initial title that I had proposed because I originally just kept with my dissertation title, which was Buying Thebes. And they said that wouldn't work. And so we shifted it and that was fine. We worked together on that and it was a good process. But again, the sort of the guiding idea behind this approach to titling an academic book is that you balance something that will sort of hook readers' interests and create a little bit of mystery, or that will in some way be memorable, with a more informative subtitle. So, how you choose between these three different schemas, the just straight informative title, the short enigmatic title, or the combination title with an enigmatic title and an informative subtitle, is really up to you. Well, I say up to you and your publisher. For me, again, it was important when I was publishing my book that it didn't just have this informative title, that it had something a little catchier at the beginning as well. And so that was a preference that I expressed to my publisher, to Routledge. Some publishers are more okay with that, some are less okay with it. So it will be something to think about. But I think it's beneficial for you as a scholar, for you as an academic, to look at what other people in your discipline are doing. Because in some disciplines, like I think the social sciences, you're probably more likely to see books that just have that informative title, whereas in the arts, you're more likely to see the sort of enigmatic titles that draw you in without providing a ton of information. So you want to figure out what people in your discipline are doing, but then the other thing you do always want to be aware of is what's your personal style, your personal preference. Because ultimately, if a book has your name on it, it reflects you and your work. And you want to make sure that it reflects you in a way that you're happy with.